The 9 Years Podcast.
I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my kingdom awaits, and they've forgiven my mistakes. I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming.
Hello, and thank you for downloading the 21st edition of the 9 Years Podcast, the weekly audio fanzine dedicated to AFC Wimbledon. My name is Nick Draper, joined each and every week by Stuart Deakins, and between us, we upload a new episode every Thursday, and we welcome you to subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at 9YRS Podcast, and like us on Facebook as well. It has been a momentous week in the history of the club, and this week on the show, we'll be looking back over the events of Thursday the 10th of December, when the Merton Planning Committee voted unanimously to allow us, along with Galliard Homes, to convert the Wimbledon Greyhound Stadium into, amongst other things, a new football stadium. It was an amazing evening that came as part of a hugely successful week for the club, and we'll be talking about everything that happened, from the academy team to the Dons Trust Board election results. But we're going to start with last Saturday's game with Stevenage and all the fallout from it. Let's start on a negative, and hopefully then we'll be able to end on a positive. We've been joined this week by Paul Raymond to discuss everything, and we'll just start chatting and see where we end up, really, because there's a lot to squeeze in. And let's start, Stu, with a few points to consider about Saturday's defeat, starting with what Mr. Ben Wilson, if I can get my words out, a man who will not be turning out again for the club, following a difficult time with us and an even more difficult exit over the weekend. Let's talk about his mistake to begin with on Saturday, the mistake he made in conceding the second goal. What did he do wrong?
Well, mistake-wise on Saturday, you have to wonder with Ben Wilson whether it was a mistake getting out of the front door, to be fair, on Saturday.
Well, we started early this week.
Because, to be fair, he had a bad day, didn't he? It's easy to go back on the highlight of his goal that he managed to come out for and miss. But he was a little bit, he just seemed a bit edgy, as if he couldn't wait to get going, really. He just seemed a bit hyper. Obviously, we all know they went out for their Christmas party on Saturday night, but Ben just seemed to be proper out of the races already. You know, he'd come rushing off his line early on in the first half, and, thankfully he didn't take out their forward, but their forward went to a wide angle and knocked it wide. But he just seemed to be a little bit edgy all afternoon, as if he was trying to make things happen. And the goal that happened, I called it early on. He got underneath it. He should have dropped off a little bit. If you look at the goal when it goes in, he's probably about 10 yards off his line. If you know the ball's going to be, affected by the wind, give yourself some yards at least to make sure you can recover. Because apparently, from what we hear, is that he was warned already that the wind was quite high by a few of the ground stewards, but decided to not take their advice. So, yeah, it wasn't great, was it?
It was indicative, if I can say that, of what was a very poor performance across the board from the team on Saturday, and that mistake just seemed to be almost the opposite of the cherry on the icing on the cake, as it were, just in reverse. I'm not sure if that works. What happened after that, following the game, and various other things that happened after the final whistle, was that Ben Wilson then became sort of the subject of a few unhappy, irate Wimbledon fans on social media, and it became a huge issue. The Daily Mirror picked up on it and actually ran a vote as to whether Ben Wilson was correct in what he did, which was to simply fight fire with fire and return the negative tweets he was getting and turn it back on the fans. One of the fans that was tweeting him made some comment using a rather rude word, I must say. Ben Wilson then got involved. He's a young boy, he will do these things. It's silly, but he's done it. And he said, you can say that about me, but you're the ones paying to watch me. It all got very childish, a little bit embarrassing for all involved. And not soon after that, it was announced that he has departed and returned to Cardiff. What did you make of the whole social media thing? Paul, I might bring you in at this moment, actually, Paul. What did you make of the whole scenario, really? Like, our fans going after players on social media? Because Ben Wilson wasn't the only one by far, and I'm sure we'll get to others as well.
Yeah, no, it's all so difficult because, social media can be brilliant, but it can also be quite shocking in terms of people become keyboard warriors. And I sort of was busy sort of Sunday and Monday, so I didn't actually see a lot of it. So I was coming into it after, a lot of the actual messages were going round. What everyone knows, what Ben actually said was totally wrong. He shouldn't have said it. But you can also understand why he got so, annoyed at the things that were being said at him.
The Morecambe game was a bit of a watershed moment in terms of that was an evening that we came away from, and Stu and I discussed that on the podcast, where fan unrest was really, really high, and we were heading into a tough week away at Accrington and York after that, and we got 2 wins out of 2, and I think we actually made it 3 wins out of 3 after that. But questions were being asked of Neil Ardley at that stage. That seems to be where we're at the moment again with sections of our fans after a run of now what is 6 games without a victory, 6 games without a win. Before we touch on the Neil Ardley scenario, I just want to go back very briefly to the Ben Wilson situation. A lot of the stuff that happened on social media afterwards, and we mentioned, didn't just happen to Ben Wilson. Frustrations aimed at other players, most notably as well George Frankham, who I'd like to point out at this junction did actually score on the weekend, and a week or 2 weeks before at Leyton Orient had a fantastic game. But the issue seemed to stem from people unhappy at the level of performance against Stevenage, combined with the players then departing very early after the game to leave on their Christmas party. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration has come from. I personally can't see what the players could do about that. They've booked their Christmas party, and I'm not, I work hard, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes in my job. We still had our Christmas party. We weren't going to cancel that, okay? I don't see there's any reason for them to.
That's lucky, isn't it?
It is lucky, yeah. But then again, as an outstanding teacher, of course, I should get a Christmas party. But no, I joke. What do we think about the situation after the game where the players were sort of rushed off and didn't get a chance to communicate with us?
I was in the main bar for the man and match presentation, and there's a couple of sides to this that I think should be, sort of looked at. First of all, George Frankham did turn up to be involved in the man and match presentation, and then I think it started later than was planned, probably because Neil Ardley kept him in the dressing room for longer to discuss the performance, and even at a just very brief level, and so perhaps man and match actually started later than was planned. The UEFA?
The Euros.
Euros, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a UEFA competition. Draw on that had already started when, and always before that, although the coverage started at 5 o'clock, they always do the various different, this is this year's 5 goldfish bowls. They look wonderful. No, they're glass, they're the same as every other year. Just get on with it. George did turn up, and then presumably they were booked on a train, and so had to go, which was disappointing. But if people say that he didn't turn up at all, that's actually incorrect. The other thing is that some people have said, why didn't they have their Christmas party last week when we didn't have a game? Mm-hmm. Presumably, if you're organising a night out in Manchester as a large group of people, there's a whole host of things that you have to organise. Group of train tickets together. So this was probably booked months ago. They looked at the fixture list and sort of went, right, this week we're home to Stevenage. We know what time the game will finish. We know where we can get to get a train. Whereas last week was meant to be FA Cup second round week. We could have been anywhere in the country. So for them organising plans. So as you said, Nick, yeah, it's right that they're entitled to a Christmas party. Anyone who says that, I think, is being a little bit sort of unrealistic. Timing is never great during a season, but also all of the squad, the management team and things like that, they do give up an awful lot over Christmas. So I think we've got to be a little bit fair to them to allow them to, have one.
I think one of the things that I was disappointed about mainly was the fact that one, why do we have to go to Manchester? We do enough travelling all season, so do we really want them to be travelling? 2, why do we travel on a Saturday? Bearing in mind they were due off on the Monday, so why can they not travel up Sunday morning? Just trying to say, I know they're all together at the ground, but I think I can see where fans' frustration comes in because yes, they all deserve a Christmas party, of course they do. I think what they felt was that the team were going out from the Saturday. They didn't put a performance in by any stretch of imagination. They didn't put a performance in. And me personally, I would have rather them had gone somewhere local and Neil had gone to them and given a little bit of a carrot and goes, "Joe, lads, go and have your Christmas do. If you perform and you play well, you can have the Monday off." And do it as some sort of incentive. I think a lot of fans were disappointed in the fact that we had such good news on Thursday. That's not the players' fault. But it went very flat. And then when you find out your players have gone to get a train and missed out on... Because Eric did say that there'd be some news about the ground. I think everyone was like, you know what, the performance was rubbish. It wasn't great. But we're going to have a little bit of see the players, see the standard stuff that we're very good at as a club. And it didn't happen. I think it just put a lot of sour taste in their mouth. I don't know why the club, and maybe the club may reflect on it, but I don't know why the club allowed them to travel on a Saturday and why Manchester. I'm not too sure whether that was sensible.
Is this one of those things though that we sort of learn as we go along, and maybe this a situation that hadn't presented itself before, and probably won't now present itself in the future again? Is that just us being a little bit still learning as a football club, perhaps, and being a little bit naive? Now, I'm sure, because as we all know, hindsight is 2020. But yeah, I agree, Stu, and you could look at it objectively prior to anything being booked and say exactly as you said. So this is not to sort of absolve anyone of any blame, but maybe this is just something that we have to go through to stop happening in future.
Just on the subject of the Monday training, Stu, I know you sort of go to training sessions usually in the summer, but do we know if we actually usually train on a Monday? Because the only thing I'm wondering about is we obviously don't own the training ground, so maybe one of the things is that we don't have access to it on a Monday. I know we've got Kings Meadow that obviously they could come in and use, but maybe that actually relies on a lot of other things taking place, and to actually, I'm not making excuses, but just saying that is it usual for them to have Mondays off? It's just one of them things, and if we had our own training ground, you could all of a sudden say, right, you're in Sunday, you're in Monday, or whatever like that.
I don't think...
One of them unknown.
I'm not too sure. I think they had train on Mondays before, but I think that's if they've got a Tuesday game. I think they've got a midweek game. I think they've sometimes gone in for a bit of... I know we can use sometimes, we've used the Tooting and Mitcham or weather pitch, don't we, and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not for a minute saying we should have punished them to go in and trained on Monday. I think what I rather would have done would have been incentive based, because let's be fair, if we go through the years, a lot of clubs have cancelled Christmas dues on the back of performances, and I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because don't get me wrong, we all work. We have bad days. Some of them more than many, but to have so many bad days and then go out for your Christmas party, fans are very emotive. We've said this so many times, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? I think the thing is, it didn't go well. George got slaughtered. George is the favourite person at the moment when the team don't play well. He's the Aziz of last year, I believe. And George by his own mission probably didn't have a great game on Saturday, but I'd argue there was quite a few. If we think about carrying players, I think we were carrying a few in that second half. So it wasn't all down to George and Ben. Do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, Ben's the last line of defence, isn't he? And he's got done by the wind.
Ben Wilson has since departed, as we know, and has not been particularly sent off with... There was no tears have been shed. In fact, there was a video posted during the week of his best bits playing for AFC Wimbledon, including a horrendous error against York, and an even more horrendous error against Dagenham, and some questionable goalkeeping against Forest Green and Leyton Orient, lastly followed by the Stevenage game. So Ben Wilson, bless him, is not going to be particularly fondly remembered. But at the moment, with all these other things going on, like we've talked about the fans' unrest about what happened after the game on Saturday, there does seem to be this disconnect between the playing staff, the current first-team playing squad, and the fans. That is, I think, mirrored in the atmosphere at Kingsmeadow. I think there are other elements to that. I think a lot of us are just sick and tired of Kingsmeadow now, to be honest with you, and we don't get ourselves motivated for these occasions. It doesn't help that we had Liverpool last season, and I think once you experience that, it is hard as a fan sometimes to psychologically think, wow, Dagenham at home, Stevenage at home, like, we're really going to create an atmosphere. It's hard. But there is that disconnect there. It was pointed at Leyton Orient how the player that got his name sung the most and the loudest was an opposition player. Is there a problem here, or were we just spoiled in the non-league days when we had players coming into the bars and what have you, and having a real social club feel? Or is there something happening in management that is creating a problem?
I've always started on this one. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Me personally, I do feel there's a bit of a disconnect. It surprised me a little bit because it sometimes contradicts how Neil Ardley is in terms of when he came into the club, he went back to the old school Wimbledon tradition. So, for I would say, he brought back the ball boys, and I know the ball boys. I got the ball boys again. Right? He brought back the under-16s.
Stu, stop thinking about ball boys. Let it go.
He brought back the tradition of the under-16s doing traditional jobs on match day. So, getting the bottles of water, sweeping all the things that
sort of traditionally club shop and
it's all those sort of things. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand Terry Brown and previously did have that introduced, but I think Neil Ardley properly got that going. He also ensures that the players go to the sponsors' meal, which Nick and I and Paul have been to, and that wasn't before. Before that, the players didn't turn up for that. So he's done a lot of stuff and made sure they go to Christmas parties and that sort of stuff. But I do think at the moment there is a little bit of a disconnect in terms of where the players are not openly on show. Now, if you go, the middle bar used to be a very good where the players would come in. Not all of them, but a good healthy proportion for man the match. It seems at the moment that they're not readily coming into the bar. Now, is that something that's been guided to them? Is that just generally how they are? They're a different group. We've got to be balanced it because Bayo, to be fair, spends after night out because he's signing autographs when he leaves. So Bayo is a very good one. So probably doesn't get a chance going to the middle bar. But I don't know if we do have as many characters. We've got Bayo, who's one of the most popular players we have. But ultimately, I would argue that we are the least connected with Bayo than his actual fan base is, who don't support AFC Wimbledon. Which I don't understand. Bayo's song is hardly sung now, probably because he ain't on the pitch that much at the moment. But we do seem to have that lack of connection with a player. Sammy Moore was a daft brush, was he? Do you know what I mean? He was daft, he was stupid, but fans loved him.
He was daft as a brush?
Daft as a brush.
He wasn't a daft brush.
Daft brush, yeah. But he wasn't. He was stupid, and he related to fans. But if you look now, the only one we really have a song for, which is crazy when you think about it, is probably Barry Fuller.
Yeah.
That's the only one we really have.
Lyle
Taylor. It kicks off a little bit sometime with Lyle, but again, it's not really sung with. If you think back to the days that we sung the Johnny Main song and Danny Kedrell song, it was sung with real. Yeah, it was sung with real passion. But I can't honestly say that Bayo's song's ever been sung with that. And I think that's with Bayo, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword with him because unfortunately, people view his social media activity as a little bit of a side screen to actually we want him to be performing on the pitch week in, week out. It's difficult.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the other thing with Sammy Moore at Leyton Orient was that he's been a really good servant to the club, okay? And then last year, how it all ended with various things that were going on, we never really got a proper chance to sort of show our appreciation to him.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's what, it wasn't necessarily just trying to single out a opposition player or, and sort of not sing about our players, but it was the first chance we had a real opportunity to say, thanks very much, Sammy, for everything you did for us. He was there in Manchester, wasn't he? And it's just like, so I'm sure the next time we play Leyton Orient, he'll probably not even get half that support that we all gave him. Well, but it was just a sort of a thank you. We really did appreciate what you did.
The devil in me would suggest that Sammy Moore won't get that reaction when Leyton Orient visit Kings Meadow because there's no atmosphere at Kings Meadow and none of us will sing any songs whatsoever. But, the flip side to that is, are we, with our players, like Stu, you mentioned we don't really have songs for players and singing them. Is that just typical of League Two? I can't think of a stadium I've been to in League Two, to be honest with you, where the atmosphere has been particularly great, where fans have been singing non-stop about the team or players that play for them. Have we just reached a level now where that sort of relationship with the players just doesn't exist anymore? Are we that sort of more professional, and is that sort of reflected in the lack of players socialising after a game in the middle bar and things like that? Are we turning into, and this is a big sort of philosophical debate now. I know we've got Plough Lane back and we're going to speak about that obviously, but are we just any other now football club in League Two? What sets us apart? It's not the relationship with the players. It's not anything else we do sort of commercially. Every single stand we have and the stadium is sponsored. The back of our shorts is sponsored. Do you know what I mean? We do anything like any other club does just to get money, however which way we can do it. And is that just reflected now in this sort of disconnect, I suppose?
I hope it's not. I do agree with everything you just said there, because I think we have lost that. Nuardi brought that professionalism to the club, but he also knows how important the fans are. He's a Wimbledon fan. We've got we've got Simon Bassey, who is a Wimbledon fan, has come out with some great stuff this week about what it should mean to Wimbledon players and what it means to Wimbledon fans, in terms of we don't die easily and we don't, the club that never died, we should never go out on a pitch and give up. And he said some really good things this week, which a Wimbledon fan would say. I think we've got to be careful. I think, we've spent a lot of energy going into the ground. The ground news is great. But we have lost a little bit of a touch of what makes us different. We are a fans club. We did the podcast with the Don's Trust lecturers that have now been voted in. And we all said, what is a fans club? It was one of the questions we made sure we asked. And there was different answers on that. But I think we have to be... I'm not saying that the players should be there 24/7 or match day should be there from early and mingling. We're not saying that. But we need to make sure that these players are recognised as Wimbledon players and ultimately one of us. And however we do that, I think we have to, because I would be disappointed if we go back to being a average League Two club, because we're not, because we are funded by the fans. So we haven't got a rich benefactor. We rely on the fans engaging with the club and engaging with the players. And the players, it's difficult because players may come in and not realise that, but if they're not, why are they not? Are we giving them the speech we used to the videos? This is what we are about. I don't know. It's I don't want to lose it. It's one of the things that I'm concerned that we are. This is the problem with this week's podcast, if I'm being honest with you, because there's so many little things you touched on there. We will get to them all. We can only sort of do one thing at a time. I would just pick you up on that point again about this sort of disconnect and the players perhaps not knowing, like you say there, about the history of the club. Do we still get them involved in the history of the club and things like that? One thing that came up last week during the Merton meeting about the stadium was the tweet that was sent to Akinfenwa, which he replied, I think perfectly respectfully. He was asked, what did you make of the news? And he was slaughtered for applying essentially words to the effect of what's happened, and people were just like, how can you not know what's happened? Do you not know what tonight is? Do you know what's going on? And he was, again, it's coming back to that social media thing as well, but it's also coming back to that disconnect, whereas our fans were ready to jump on him and ride him and give him a really tough time for that, which I don't think would have been the case 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. No, but let's be thankful we didn't have social media back in the days of 10 years ago.
Well,
let's be fair. If you think about some of the
on social media.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you think back to
on social media.
Or if you think back to the days of Ben Thatcher and Vinnie Jones, could you imagine social media back then? Vinnie would be offering you out for a fight in a local pub. Paul touched on it before. Social media is an absolute nightmare, and me personally, I think I didn't join in with the Ben Wilson grief. What's the point? The guy knows he's made a mistake. He obviously was sick the day that Cardiff done their social media training and media training.
Well, they're Welsh. They might not have it.
He's a young kid, and he naturally, it's an emotive game. He naturally was. Let's be fair, he was baited in a lot of situations to bite. And the moment he bit, we then go, oh, he's bit, and he's saying these things. We baited him to do that, So people like Bayo are a bit cleverer. They don't get involved in that, or they block you, and they, Bayo knows how important social media is to his brand. And we know Bayo's got a brand. We're not stupid with that. I think the thing, I was probably isolate the thing about Bayo was I think there was a disconnect with Bayo, definitely. And people, I've said this to a number of people this week, is that Bayo's social media interest was massive last season. It's the same as what it is this season. The difference is last year he performed on the pitch and scored goals, so people ignored that and gave him the benefit of doubt. This season, all you see is Bayo doing all social media. That's what he did last year.
There were lots of things we touched on there. I suppose we should just sort of finish off talking about discussing this Stevenage game as a whole. As we know, a lot of frustration afterwards. The performance was very, very poor. I can't think of a worse one in a long, long time. The ones that immediately came to mind were Southend. We lost 4-0 in the early days of Neil Ardley, which was shocking. Maybe a Morecambe 3-0 at the end of the season, which doesn't really count because it's at the end of the season. It was awful against Stevenage on Saturday. Concerns were flagged, and I know, Stu, you raised these, about some of the decisions that were made by the management team. Certainly the substitutions. Now, we noted on the bench how we had 5 unused substitutes, which off the top of my head, I should have this in front of me, apologies for my poor research, but off the top of my head, it was McDonnell in goal, Sweeney, Cadger, Fitzpatrick, and one other, who's Tunga, of course. All youth products, none of them, we only used 2 substitutes, none of them came on the pitch. Now, we thought we needed something to change on Saturday. We were playing so poorly. I don't see an issue with sticking a Fitzpatrick on for a George Frankham who's not having the best of games, or second halves anyway, or Sean Riggs similarly. Was there an element that they were having the Monday night under-21s game in mind, and that's why they didn't want to bring them on? If so, why put them on the bench? My question really is, why did we not change things up, and why did we go for the team we went for on Saturday?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I felt that I was one of the ones that said one would be Fitzpatrick to start. On the back, if he didn't start, at least give him some sort of game time. You know, he come back from Tunbridge, played games, had a good under-21s. Even to the fact of, Edgy Carter on the bench and Tunga, and I felt we don't play with enough pace. And I think Stevenage, if you look at the weather on Saturday, the second half, the ball was just coming back. So playing a long ball into Bowen made no real sense because we couldn't get the yardage on the ball to really get any momentum. So the only way probably of really getting at them was getting around the sides of them, getting the ball to feet and having, running at defenders. And probably, Tunga, probably one of the toughest things coming. I think the middle area was quite a tough area. But definitely out wide, that's probably where we could have gone with, especially Ejikaja, or we could have gone with Fitzpatrick. And Nick and I we were saying probably just before the goal, probably about 5 minutes before the goal, we need to do something a little bit different. It wasn't a reaction. We didn't say it as, we can see the goal now, we need to now start attacking. We did call it beforehand, didn't we? We just said we're not doing enough to really see the game out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would be disappointed if it was the under-21s because they're kids. They're kids. They should, they'd rather be playing, wouldn't they, rather than training. So, I think they had, we've had the under-18s that played on the Monday night last week at Bournemouth, and then played on a Friday night. So they're kids. They should be able to play a couple of games back to back. But we do have this little bit of a... We do well to get these players, so we get the under-18s into the 21s, and we get the 21s into the first team sub, and then all of a sudden we have a brick wall. And it's only really Nightingale that's bucked that trend, isn't he? Let's be fair, if it weren't for his injury, I think he'd have probably played about 20 games already by now.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. Just to finish up on the Stevenage game before we move on. Stevenage, then, let's just get these things out of the way. Poor performance, we've all said it, didn't do enough. Poor. Was there anyone that stood up? Anyone that you can give any sort of credit to?
Interesting one. I thought the defence done all right. I thought they dealt well with a strong. Matt was quite tough, wasn't he? Do you know what I mean? We've done well with that. I wouldn't say. Apart from that, no one really stood out. The players like Reeves and Meads didn't really get the game by the scruff of the neck. But then we can't keep expecting these players to play 8, 9 out of 10 every week. Do you know what I mean? We've got to make sure we have average performances across the board. So I don't think anyone come out of it with major credit, to be fair. Can
we choose a villain? Can we choose a worst performing player from that squad on Saturday? Or is that being harsh to single one out?
Well, let's just pick on Ben because obviously he can't hear us now anyway. Do you know what I mean? So we can say.
I bet he was listening. Hi Ben.
We can say.
iPad.
We can say what we want. We can say what we want now, mate. Can't we? No, John, Ben. In all seriousness, I know Ben's got a lot of bad grief, but I spoke to Ben a couple of times because I got him confused because I thought he was Welsh. He's actually a Geordie, and I have spoken to him. He's actually a nice guy. He's got to learn. He's got to go back to Cardiff, regroup, stay off Twitter, and just get on with his football.
That's great advice. And Ben, if you are listening, I would take that on board. We're going to do something slightly different for this podcast because we want to end on a real positive, which was the ground situation. So we're going to do our match preview. Just quickly look ahead to Newport now. Stu, what can you tell us about this Saturday's trip to Wales, other than that we're not going? It's too close to Christmas. Newport is hell on earth. Sorry, Newport fans, if you're listening. It's not a place. No, sorry, really, get out. If you can afford it, get out of there. It's horrible. It's awful. It's like an urban wasteland. But results-wise, they're picking up, aren't they, Stu? And we might have a tough game on Saturday.
Yeah, I was saying to you before, I've done a bit of research. I'm conscious that we've gone on a little while about the Stevenage game, which is fair enough. So I won't go on too much about Newport, because to be honest with you, the more I talk about it, the more I'm a bit worried about it. But yeah, I was saying, there were 10 games unbeaten going into Notts County, which they ended up losing 4-3. But they were 10 games unbeaten before then, and also got into the third round of the FA Cup. So they've had a decent run. If you look at where they were getting hammered week in, week out.
It looked like an easy 3 points.
Yeah, if you look at some of their defeats, they got beat 3-0 at home by Crawley. To that certain extent, they got beat 3-0 by York. So
Wow.
if you look back to their defeats, 3-0 at Cambridge, they had some serious defeats. So something had to give, and you can see why Terry Butcher got the sack. But to be fair, by bringing in Sheridan, you have to say that he's really used his contacts very well. They have 6 loanees in at the moment. One's due to go back. They've got a striker on loan from Charlton, Zach Anzar, who's got 2 goals in 12 games, but he's going back. And John Sheridan's gone through and said he's just not ready yet to really to play in League Two. He's got a couple of goals, but I don't think he's keeping them. But what they've done, they've gone to a 3-5-2, and they've brought in 3 defenders. They brought a defender in from Notts County, Scott Bennett, which is quite mad. He was at Exeter, played 132 games at Exeter.
Rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, went to Notts County, played 2 games for Notts County, and has gone loaned out. So that tells you what you need to know about Notts County, doesn't it, really? They've got a centre-half on loan from Aston Villa, who was at Tranmere last year. Got relegated, but played 31 games for them. So you look at that, they've really gone through. The one that I looked at was they've got a guy called Tommy O'Sullivan, who he's
Irish.
No, believe it or not, he's on loan from Cardiff. He was a Welsh under-17, a Welsh under-19, and is currently a Welsh under-21 player for them in midfield. Only 20, but I've looked through the reviews and they rate him highly. So it's interesting, the loan market. That's something probably we'll touch on again, probably later end of this podcast in the season, because the loan market is due to change in terms of how it can be used. But you have to say John Sheridan's used it very well, and we're in for a tough game up there on Saturday. And I'll take a point now if you offered it to me.
Paul, a prediction for Saturday at Newport, other than it's going to be miserable and cold, and it's in Wales.
I'll go for 1-0.
Yeah, Stu,
draw,
you take that as well?
I'll go for a 0-0 just because I'm not going, so I don't really care what the score is. I'm joking. To be fair, like Newport, I think Nick, you're being a bit harsh on Newport. It ain't that bad, actually. No, it's
Stu,
more you think about it is bad.
Over, Stu, honestly. Do you know what? We walked for about 2 hours to find a pub, and all we found was just derelict buildings, and sort of drunk old women weeing in the streets.
and then they beat us, didn't they, as well? What's that all about? But
and they did actually hammer us as well.
Now, do you know what? Newport's a good ground to go to, because if you're ever depressed about where you live, go to Newport. You'll be dying to get back on the train and get home. So it's always good to pick me up. And if you're listening from Newport, I don't mean it.
You do. I'm going to do my prediction on the Arsenal Prediction League, and I am going to say that we are going to do what we did a couple of years ago, which was go to Newport on a really bad run, and somehow, with the striking talents and end product talents of Charlie Sheringham and Kevin St. Luce, somehow get a victory. So I'll go. We'll get a 1-0 by hook or by crook somehow.
You can tell it's Christmas, mate, can't you?
Talking about the first team as well, then, things were brought into sharp focus with the first team and the connection. We talked about this earlier, about the disconnect between the first team and the fans and things like that. Flip side of that is that fans travelled up to Watford on the Friday, the night before, for an FA Cup, Youth Cup game, where we actually beat Watford. And there's a great quote I have from Alfie Egan, who, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought he scored the equaliser that took the game into extra time. Is that correct? Have I got that right?
Yeah, it was.
It was. Great quote from him about the game where he said, "We went into the game believing we were the better team. Doesn't matter if they're in the Premier League. Doesn't matter if they're Category 2. We're Wimbledon. We believed we were going to come here and get a result out of it." Some of our fans are saying we need to take that attitude and transfer it to the first team because they don't believe the first team at the moment have that same... They don't
passion.
have that... Yeah, they don't have that same passion. They don't have that same belief, that same sort of mission statement almost that we are Wimbledon. Is that fair on the first team?
I think one of the things that's different with the youth team, is that you find that we pick up these kids round. Well, some have been there from the under sort of 8s, the under 9s. I don't know if I haven't been, to be fair, this season, but we went down to on a Sunday. We went down to see. It's probably a couple of years ago. Forgive me, I must get down there again. But I saw the under 15s when we had the under 15s that had been the under 12, under 13 champions of the country and stuff. And I went to get down there, and I was absolutely amazed that we had all these different age groups all playing on the same day. All in Wimbledon kits, and they're from under 8s, under 9s, under 10s. I think what you have to remember with these kids, they've come through the academies, so all they know is Wimbledon, and they've fallen in love with the club. So it's like what we've done. We've recruited fans at an early age, so they're talking as fans. And Mark Robinson, who is involved with the youth, I've spoken to him a couple of times. I know a few mates of him, and he loves Wimbledon, and he wants them to get it. He wants them to get it because what he wants to do is he wants them to go home. So when they get into under 16, under 17s, they do get a contract. He wants them to sort the club and actually tell their parents, "Go, do you know what? You love it there. You stay there."
Yeah, I was going to say I was at Watford on Friday night and managed to get out of a boring corporate meeting at the first opportunity, jump on a tube and then train over to Watford. And
can I just stop you there, Paul, just for a second? Everything I said about Newport apply to Watford, but times it by 1,000,000.
Well, okay. Well, but the only thing is about Watford is that they charge us £3 to get into their ground. Sit in a Premiership ground for £3. Can't remember the last time even I did that.
And gave you a seat you could fit in as well. To be fair, not like the club, the close by, Nick.
St Albans. Let's just say Watford is not a Premier League ground. Let's just say it that way. Not yet. They have to be there for a little bit longer.
Well, no, Nick, you'll love this line. As I was walking along to the ground, there's a group of kids, because it was free for under 16s as well. A group of kids were walking along, and they were looking through the gap, and they're going, "Oh, they've really done it up. It's almost like a proper Premier League ground now."
It won't be for very long.
You know, which was quite interesting. But no, just going back to our players, they were just such a credit. It's right from the start. You know, I hadn't seen that quite mouthy. So when you read it out there, it's just like, yeah, that's exactly what it was like right from the first whistle. And it was like they just, you know, no battle was going to be lost or anything like that. And when we went behind, it was like, no, heads didn't drop. It's like, we'll just go again. We got the penalty. And then we went 2-1 down. And it was quite funny because we had this corner in the last minute of normal time. And Will Mannion was in goal for the side. And he was like edging out of the box. And it was like looking over the bench, saying, "Can I go up? Can I go up?" Mm-hmm. And there was sort of a little bit of indecision. So he was like 3/4 of the way out of his box, you know, sort of to the halfway line. And it was just like, no. And then, although we didn't score directly from the corner, it was that move that got us the goal. And it was just like the togetherness in that team was really good. And how Watford even managed to get it to extra time, I don't know. And then it got to the penalties. And yeah, we had the advantage of they decided that you know, we'd save the first one, and then the second one, I think might have actually reached the International Space Station before Tim Peake, as it sort of fired wide and quite high. But you know, there was just confidence brimming all over the guys, and when that group of players, they're such a nice bunch. You know, on a first team match day, you've already spoke about how, you know, they do jobs around the ground. They always come and pick up passes from myself. They always stop for a chat, and they're just really good, down to earth kids. And you know, I'm so pleased for them.
I just want to touch on this very quickly. We need to mention this one. We talk about what sets our club apart and what makes it different. Obviously, we are fan-owned and fan-run by having the Dons Trust board oversee everything that goes on at the football club. And obviously, the elections that we did have been on for over 6 weeks, or it feels like longer now, actually. Finally, the results were announced last week. Thank you very much to all those of you that all of you spoke to us on the podcast. We did an election special. The results are in. Sadly, one person had to miss out on the voting, and that was Cormac. Just want to touch on, and Stu, I'm sure you'll echo me when I say this. Cormac was just an absolute pleasure to interview. Lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm, a very, very passionate man, and I think someone who's got a lot of ideas and also the energy and the drive to see these ideas through in the future, and he would be a real asset to our football club. He is a real asset to our football club. So, Cormac, if you're listening, please don't give up. Please stick with us, see what you can get involved in, and maybe next time we'll be on there.
Yeah, I saw Cormac on Saturday. Yeah, he's disappointed, but he also realises that it's, you know, he was honest enough to say he did his manifesto late, he got involved a bit late to it. I think by standing, he's realised actually how much he wants it. And I'm sure that what I like about him, and, you know, he gets himself noticed. So he's the only person I know went around the ground, talked to people. His dad is disabled. He noted who he was. He remembered what he was saying to him, you know, and he said, I want to make things a bit better for disabled. Just to give a very quick recap, you know, Lorraine's dad is going at 1:30 to save a seat for his disabled area. He can't pre-book it. He can't pre-book a seat. So he has to sit in there, and Cormac was very much, well, let's find out why is that. You know, he very much wanted to get to the bottom of stuff and was very keen to do stuff. And I think definitely from what I hear on the podcast that he did with us, I think he's made himself well known to people, and I think he will fare better moving forward. But I'm sure that it won't be the end of his involvement. And yeah, he's a good lad, and yeah, I'm really pleased we got a chance to meet him, have a chat with him through the podcast.
Yeah, and was the case for everyone that ran. Obviously, congratulations to David, Colin, Jane, Tom, Roger, and Mark, who will be serving on the board now. Especially a big congratulations to Jane. Not that I'm sure she was measuring herself in this way, but she did receive the most number of votes. So congratulations, Jane, and once again, thank you very much for all your support with the podcast as well.
Yeah, well done too.
We are rapidly running out of time. We are here to speak about all the great things that happened at the club this week. The biggest thing, obviously, being Thursday night at the Merton Civic Centre, under the fantastic, I guess, conducting, really, of Neil Milligan. Neil Milligan, we are going to get on this podcast, Stu. He is a legend. What a man. I'm not entirely sure what his job title is officially, but he was the man leading the meeting. It was quite clear early on Thursday that he was in our favour, and he just seemed like a nice guy.
He was a planning officer in charge of it.
That's such a boring job title for such a wonderful man. He might have turned me.
But also the other person on the evening, obviously outside of our camp as such, was the chair. Who she did an absolutely brilliant job. There was some very funny moments in a stressful evening, you know, sort of where you go into it and not sure how it's going to happen. To give you an example, there's a really bizarre section where the members of the council can ask questions, but it's set in different subjects. And one of the councillors, or whatever their role actually is, stood up and said, is this the section where I can ask about X or whatever it was? And she just went, no. And just moved on. And it was just like, we were about 2.5 hours into this meeting, and it was just, you know, you thinking, that's really quite funny. But, yes.
There were lots of people on the night that did a fantastic job as well. I mean, we mentioned all those people that spoke in favour of us, including Kay Skelton, in charge of the AFC Wimbledon Foundation, who was noted for her speech. Obviously, Eric as well, who said his part, did a fantastic job. And we got the decision we wanted. There was great watching it live. Stu, you were watching it like I did online, didn't we, on the Merton website? there was a great moment where the chair asked for the vote for a show of hands, and we couldn't see anything other than the chair with her hand raised. And the moment she turned around and said, "Well, that's unanimous," well, let's say I was dancing around my living room at that point. It was a great moment.
Yeah. It was interesting, wasn't it? You know, obviously, Paul, you know, you being there, it was interesting because I don't know whether you were aware of Twitter went into meltdown for Wimbledon. I don't know how much you were aware of that, whether you had your phones. Obviously, I know you were doing updates, weren't you?
Yeah, I was live tweeting as much as I could and trying to. It's really quite difficult on some of the subjects that they were discussing. It's very difficult to put over in a way that people can understand. So I tried to put a bit of humour into it. There was one particular tweet that I sent out that the response to it was just absolutely off the scale. And basically they were talking about, with the apartments and things like that, about refuse and rubbish collection. And I just thought, they're discussing refuse and rubbish. Don't they understand we're Wombles? And it, you know, my phone just went absolutely crazy. So yeah, no, we were more than well aware of how it was going on out in, you know, internet land and things like that. But actually being in the public gallery, as referred to, was really interesting because there was probably about 50 seats. My estimate would be 45 were probably AFC Wimbledon fans. The one thing that everyone did during it, when anyone was speaking, there was deadly silence. Everyone was allowed to say what they wanted to say, whether it be people that were clearly against us or people that were in favour of us. We've already singled out Kay Skelton for her speech, which was amazing, and the work that's done with Hyde Park and things like that. But another one that I think is really good was the headmistress of Southfields Academy, who basically said a lot of things that we wanted to say but perhaps couldn't say, you know, without making it saying like, oh, they're just saying that. But this was a local headmistress saying, this is the benefit that they already bring to my school, my pupils. Can you imagine what it'd be like if they're on our doorstep? You were talking about the actual vote, and it was really quite funny because I was trying to periscope it, and all of a sudden she said, right, let's have a vote. And it was just like, hit the broadcast button, and then it was just like, okay, show in favour of hands, and it was just like not clear, you know, sort of. And then she went, right, that's unanimous, and we were just in utter shock because the feeling going into it was there were a number of councillors who were totally against it and were going to, you know, vote against it. But with it being such a unanimous decision, it does make the whole going forward process with the mayor's office, I personally believe, a lot easier because we can now say, rather than saying, oh, we scraped through, you know, a 6-4, a 7-3 result, we can say Merton Council backs us. And that is such a powerful statement.
I think, you know, just what I was saying now, you touched on some really good stuff in terms of the way it was respectful. You're right. You know, I think we heard after Eric spoke of Raws. But no, don't get me wrong, we've not been privy to these sort of meetings before, but they're obviously there's a lot of passion going on there. These big decisions for communities. But I think we showed ourselves to be very gentleman-like, and it's very much like the old Wimbledon or England's club, isn't it? Very much like very prim and proper. But I think there was a temptation to get involved in what the Greyhound bid was going on about, which was very much to probably engage us into being the sort of preconceived idea of what a football fan is, a hooligan and stuff. And you know, but I think we, you know, Eric and the club said, don't get involved. Please don't get involved in any of this ongoing stuff. And I think we held ourselves in such a very good light. I think that come across on Thursday night, and in the end, I think we had the best. We had the best bid. The Merton Council wanted us to be back in the borough, and I think on Thursday night, I think one of the things that I come out of it was I was very proud to be a Wimbledon fan.
Very much so.
On how we'd done, you know, and you know, Eric, of course, Eric is a great public speaker, and his speech was just superb. but there's so much work that's gone in behind it to everyone, and I think there's a lot of people that had big smiles on their faces on Thursday.
But it was a fantastic night, and Paul, you were there, and you very kindly spoke to a few of our fans about the decision afterwards. I'm sure when the partying was going on into the early hours across the Wimbledon area. We're going to play those at the very end of the show. We're going to really end on a positive, so we're going to play those in a little bit. But again...
and just very quickly on that, we did decamp across the road to a local establishment, and there seemed to be a couple in there who appeared to be out for a nice romantic evening.
Good luck.
Really sorry when about 40 Wimbledon fans walked in, all really happy, singing, all speaking really loudly, ordering various bottles and drinks. So we hope you didn't spoil your evening, and you got what you wanted out of it.
Well, it was an evening of true romance, and it couldn't be more romantic than a bunch of Wimbledon fans celebrating return home to Merton. Surely not.
Twitter was in meltdown. What I would say is thank you to a lot of people that followed us on the Twitter site on our 9YRS podcast. I think we doubled our viewers overnight.
Viewers? Followers?
Followers. And even managed to get John Green as well following us. And like I say, also, Paul, thanks very much also for promoting us on there as well, which was good. We're very much linked in with AFCW Scope as well, the Periscope stuff. So we all sort of try and muck in together with that. But I was just, like I say, my phone was like a Christmas tree. It was lighting up every 2 or 3 seconds. And it was just, I must admit, I was just absolutely shattered after it because it was just so much going on. But I think it's one of those nights that will, I think will live me for a little while because it was just such a symbolic evening, and we've got a great chance now for finally going home.
Twitter was hilarious on the evening. We were very active, as Stu has related to, and we are very active. So please, if you don't follow us on Twitter already, join the conversation at 9YRS Podcast. We're going to be more and more active throughout the season, as the season goes on. And thank you very much for those of us that joined us on Thursday. Also, thank you very much, Paul, as Stu's already touched on, for promoting us as well. It was a fantastic evening. Part of our sort of social media activity on Twitter, which we are going to follow up on. There's going to be loads of things going up in the next couple of days, actually, or I say next couple of days. As you're listening to this, it should have already gone up. One of the things that went up the other day was a quiz. Now, we would normally do a birthdays quiz. I think we're a bit short on birthdays. I might do one for you guys in a minute. But there was a quiz on the Guardian website about Stu's favourite sort of football accompaniment, which is food. And there was a catering quiz.
I thought you meant ball boys.
Oh, sorry. No, that's next week. Ball boys. I think Dr. Fox is running that quiz.
He's got more time in his hands now.
He's allowed to again. He's allowed to do it again. Blimey, I don't know if we're allowed to broadcast that. I'll do it and see what happens.
Oh dear, that was close to the bone, wasn't it? Hang on, it's Christmas.
Close to the bone. Well, Dr. Fox would know all about that one. Anyway, moving on. There was a quiz about food. Stu, I actually beat you on this. It was pictures of various catering outlets at football stadiums across the country, and I actually got a higher score than you. What's going on? I thought you'd have been the man to go to when it came to food outlets.
You know what? I think it was actually quite a good quiz because some of them made you think, because some were visual.
Sorry, hold on. Some of them were visual. Stu, they were all photographs. There were no audio clues.
What I mean is that some of you had to look and you could see if there was a Man United shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
Where some were actually, I remember the Cambridge United one or the one that was Accrington.
Yeah.
There was some that you go, oh yeah, I remember that.
The Cambridge one was the one with the stand in the background with CUFC on the seats, wasn't it?
Yeah, but as I've got many friends at football, many friends at work, I've got Man United friends who didn't actually know Cambridge were in a league until they played them in the FA Cup.
Wow.
So I know, the other half live, isn't it? But it's good quiz. I can't believe you got more than me. Obviously, you're better at lucky pick. You're a lucky dip than I am.
Well, actually, I'm a bit daft, because I actually clicked on the wrong button for one of them, and also a couple of them when I actually thought about it logically. I think I didn't choose Man United for one of them because they'd already done Man United. Man United popped up there twice. So I didn't choose Man U on one of them because it already happened. The one I got wrong, ridiculously, I clicked on the wrong one, was the Stadium Delight, which was obviously Sunderland, obviously.
Oh dear.
But I clicked on the wrong button. I think I chose Stoke. So technically I'm going to give myself a 17 out of 20, but never mind. If you want to have a go on that quiz, it is on our Twitter and I'll retweet it again for you when we upload the podcast onto iTunes. you want to have a quick? Oh no! Before we got onto birthday's game, actually, Stu, we're running late now. I don't care. We just go as long as we keep talking. You went to the under-21s on Monday night, a really tough game against Cambridge. Funnily enough, they played a very strong team, didn't they? And we got a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, so Cambridge put out a really strong team. So five of the people that were on the bench who didn't get on for their win at Plymouth for last Saturday played quite strong. Coulson, Donaldson, Robbie Simpson, decent players. It was played at a really, you could tell the players definitely were wanting to put a stamp on the game in terms of there was a lot of challenges going in. Probably the most vocal team that I've had the pleasure of seeing at Merton, to be fair, coming down to play Wimbledon. Sean Derry was in attendance, so that probably had a lot to do with it. But it was an interesting game. First half, Cambridge dominated it. They put their foot in a lot better than we did. They treated it like a proper first-team game. And the kids struggled. And we was kids. We had a very young side out from James Shea and Andy Bartram who played. But the rest were all the regular under-21s. You could tell they were a little bit intimidated. But I will have to say, James Shea, it's interesting. When you obviously play at a first-team stadium, you don't hear what his communication like. But his communication was really, really good, really positive. Made sure some of the defenders who were up against it, he made them feel better about themselves by being very encouraging, very positive. He was determined to get a clean sheet on Monday night. There was no doubt about it. And after the performance by Ben Wilson on Saturday, and also not having Shea around, it was just an absolute pleasure to know he's come back into the team. He was outstanding. He was outstanding on there. So it's so obvious now that James Shea had an injury. Especially from the side of it, it's so obvious now because his kicking was just superb. His movement was good. He made some cracking saves, and you can just tell now he was injured because that was a shade that I want to see moving in. It's like signing a player who's Twitter trained.
We're running so late, but you know what? As a famous radio DJ and his radio show used to say, we're running late, but we're sounding great. So let's get on with the birthdays game. Paul versus Stu. You've got some competition this week, Stu.
Cool.
Kasabian guitarist Sergio Pizzorno.
28. Probably miles out, but who cares?
Yeah, I think he's a bit older than that. I'm going to go for 35.
No way. It's happened. We need to get some music, some celebratory music on. Stu, you've done it.
Hey!
Bang on. He is
Happy
35.
days. Well, 1 in 100 was going to happen eventually, wasn't it? So.
It was. Wow. Tell you what, today Stu gets a birthday absolutely 100% correct on. Tomorrow, Chelsea might actually win a football match. I tell you, anything can happen now.
Steady on.
Okay, maybe not. Well, what else, Stu? I don't think there's any point in carrying on.
They're playing on Friday this week.
Who, Chelsea?
Yeah.
Why?
You said they might win a football match tomorrow.
Anyway, moving on. Thank you very much, Stu.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us, Paul.
Hello.
And we shall play out on the interviews you conducted last Thursday following the historic decision at the Merton Civic Hall. We might try and squeeze a little bit of Christmas music in at the end of it as well, because it is Christmas and we haven't had any Christmas music yet today. So enjoy, and we shall see you again next week.
Hey, Paul Raymond. Wow, what a day, what a night. 10th of December 2015. We are going home. 24 years away from Plough Lane. Been a supporter for 30 years. Wow, what a Christmas this is. Thank you very much. We are going home.
Karen Scott, it's brilliant!
Dennis, a wonderful day in my life yet again.
Rob Ringsell, and I'm just totally numb and so delighted that we're actually going home after all this time. It's been a long struggle. Credit to everyone who's worked towards getting what we wanted today. Absolutely over the moon. We're going home. Fantastic.
Dean Parsons, Tintin. What does today mean to me? Probably more emotional than the playoff final. This is something that we've dreamt about. I was only at Plough Lane for 8 years. I loved every second of Plough Lane. Selhurst was never the same. Kings Meadow I loved, very proud of it, but going back to Wimbledon, something a lot of people have worked bloody hard for many years. Whilst a lot of us just enjoyed the football, a lot of people worked hard for this day. To them, I thank every single one of them for making today happen. I can't wait to see that first brick in place. I can't wait for that first ball to be kicked. I can't wait to bang that bin for the first time in New Plough Lane. Bring it on! The Dons are going home!
My name is Jane Lonsdale and I'm a Dons Trust Board member, just re-elected Dons Trust Board member.
And what's it mean to you today?
Oh my God, I can't even begin to tell you. I can't get over the fact that it was a unanimous decision. That is just unreal. It's completing the circle. We are going to go back home where we belong.
Cormac van der Hoeven. I'm going to be going to my first match at Plough Lane. I'm one of the Glamour fans who met the club in the Premiership years, but going through the AFC Wimbledon days has taught me everything about this club's non-league tradition, and we're going to go to Plough Lane, and the first 200 Jaeger bombs are on me.